Hello everyone, this is Matthias Melkersen from the MS Endpoint Manager site. With me today I have three rock stars from the community. We have Mo, Dan and Sean. And guess what? This is the PowerShell App Deployment Toolkit founders. This is so cool to have you on board. Welcome.
Thank you, Matthias. Great to be here. Thanks for having us.
So it's a big day for me because when I started IT, I started to automate software, and I think it was back in 2004. PowerShell App Deployment Toolkit didn't exist back then, did it? Nope. So obviously it's around 10 years old now, yeah?
2013,
well,
I think, was the launch, yeah.
In August, if I'm right.
SourceForge, I think, is the initial version.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So back then we had, we had MSI in Windows Installer, and that was quite robust and a good way to actually automate software. So that was what I was using particularly. But then I moved on and I looked at SMS and the later configuration manager from Microsoft. And I saw the need for standardizing and a tool, and that's where you came in and brought that into the world, right? But guys, we are going to introduce you. So Dan, please introduce yourself.
Yeah, I'm Dan Cunningham. I'm in Toronto, in Canada. I'm actually Irish, as is Sean. I'm 41, and I work in obviously the endpoint management space. I've kind of jumped around from a variety of different companies. So I was in financial for like 15, 20 years, and then moved into security consultancy, and now kind of back into endpoint management again.
Super cool. And Sean, and then Mo.
Hi, Sean Lillis is my name. I am 42 years old. I am working in endpoint management and have been for some time now. Actually, mainly in financial services for most of my career. And my current focus is on Intune and Windows 365, but always with PowerShell in the background.
Yeah, exactly.
Cool. And I'm Mo Mishwani, and I'm based out of Houston, Texas. And these guys started the project. I joined a little bit later. But I've been in the endpoint space, application packaging. That's sort of where I started out in my career. And then I moved from there to, imaging and software distribution and asset management, and, worked in a number of different industries, from large conglomerates to smaller companies. And the App Deployment Toolkit was my first foray into PowerShell, as for a lot of people in this space. And it's been a fun ride.
That's super cool. So you have a background from deploying something and using some system to deploy stuff. Yeah. So how did the idea of building a strong foundation for application deployment happen? I mean, we have all these tools available. We have MSI, we have obviously a lot of package formats, but what I saw was in the market, it was quite hard to repackage every executable, and people just wanted to use the executable and then do some adjustments. Was that your plan to make that easier? Or
yeah, I mean, I think where this started from was YScript. That was, I think, we all have the common. We all kind of started using YScript for standardization, and then that was actually deprecated, as far as I remember. And I think we were all kind of looking at PowerShell as a potential replacement. Sean, you probably actually have a lot of the background on that.
Yeah, well, I mean, you mentioned YScript, VBScript, was another one that was used quite commonly. And I think pretty much anyone who was in the application packaging space or application deployment, we're all encountering similar challenges. And application wrapping is something that it just it's a requirement in so many scenarios to solve different challenges. So, you know, lots of people had been out there writing their own scripts, but there was very little sort of standardization or reusable code. Those scripts all had something in common, and they were all trying to solve, you know, similar types of problems like messaging prompts to interact with users during installation, maybe closing running applications, setting registry keys, finding old software to uninstall old versions. And I guess that's kind of, you know, where we saw an opportunity with PowerShell. And for me, like Mo and Dan, I think this was probably our first major foray into PowerShell to create a standardized app deployment framework, which would provide, you know, a standardized workflow with the logging, with a consistent look and feel, and sort of a reusable toolbox of all of these common sort of tasks that you need to do. So that's kind of where it came about. Dan and I were colleagues in a financial services company, so that's where it was released initially, internally. And then it subsequently went public. And it kind of just evolved and gained traction from there, because, you know, it just resonated with a lot of people in the industry and the community who were having the same problems, and they came across the toolkit, and this was giving them a solution to those problems. And I think one of the things that really helped with that adoption was the sort of endorsement that the toolkit got from some prominent people in the community, from Microsoft MVPs, who, you know, people were blogging about it, people who were talking about it at conferences. So that's kind of, I guess, the story of how it all began. Don't know if the guys want to chime in.
Yeah, I think I wanted to mention something. So you mentioned, you know, like, yeah, when it comes to standards, MSIs are great, right? Like, that's how you should be doing everything in a perfect world. You shouldn't need the PS App Deployment Toolkit, but the reality is there's a lot of applications that need to be packaged. And during the time when we were first releasing the toolkit, there were all these OS migration projects going on. People had thousands, literally, sometimes 10,000 applications that need to be migrated. No one has the time or effort or man hours to repackage that many things. Even if you want to use MSIs, you cannot in reality actually do that. So you need something that's quick and easy, can get the job done, and, you know, move on, finish your project on time, and get people migrated to the newer OS. And that's where I think we sort of filled the hole. You know, standards are great, but there's something to be said for getting things done efficiently and quickly, and you know, not spending your whole lifetime like trying to figure out all the tables in the MSI and what the standards say. So that's all I have to say about that. And then the other thing, like, you know, I started off on VBScript and YScript templates, and with VBScript, you always had the challenge of you know, how do you do complicated things like that? Maybe make API calls and things like that, right? And with YScript also had the same challenge. They had a way of making API calls, but it was really kludgy. It was kind of difficult to do anything complicated. And with PowerShell, it was the first tool that sort of made it really nice and easy. You could make the calls to C# code or invoke .NET classes. And, you know, I honestly think it was just like it's a perfect scripting language. Like, I know Python's got a lot of fans out there, but I feel like the syntax and the way, you know, PowerShell is architected is just really sublime. And so, you know, it was a good tool to sort of learn and build a template off of.
Yeah, I think you're right. IT definitely changed the way IT pros needed to be able to manage their infrastructure while PowerShell came around, right? Anyone who managed servers and stuff, they needed to be able to learn PowerShell and or should at least, well, to do proper management. So yeah, definitely. And now we are in version 7 or something, PowerShell. So it keeps developing and extending its features. And what it can do, right? So it's quite a good language to base a community tool on. So I know that your tool is currently in version 3.8.4. Is that correct?
That is correct, as up until today.
Yeah. So having that many versions, I guess you've spent quite amount of time building this tool. So please tell me, while you developed this, I mean, there's obviously been a lot of time spent in this in the beginning and finding out what the framework should be. But in your everyday, how do you fit it in?
So I think initially we would have spent a lot of time on this. The first few months and first couple of years, actually, I know we probably dedicated like a hell of a lot of personal time towards getting this fleshed out. And that's, as our careers have changed over time, we've obviously spent less time. We're not directly working with, or at least I'm not directly working with SCCM anymore. However, there is like opportunities for us to keep kind of like working with it, and it's not just for application deployments. At least we've found opportunities to use it for other kind of configuration management purposes. So there's still scope to use it and being able to develop things for it. I think that guys, I'll let you jump in here if you've anything to add to that.
Yeah, I would say it took a lot of perseverance and passion to kind of overcome the challenges. It's one thing to have a vision; it's another thing to then go and sort of execute on that. So it was a labor of love. I can remember some of the best ideas coming to me at 2 or 3 in the morning, and then being really enthusiastic about getting up the next day and going in to sort of solve that challenge or adding that feature. So it was initially it was a big outlay in terms of the time investment, and then, as Dan said, we've been in and out of it through different stages in our careers, to the point where it's obviously where it is at today. It's a very stable tool, and it doesn't demand as much time now as it did initially.
No. And I guess when GitHub came around and you publish code there, people have stuff they want to get you develop and have good ideas, or how's that?
Well, I mean, I think there's definitely been some additions to the projects from external. Like, I mean, there's additional tooling that's sprung up. I'm trying to think of. I know there's like an automatic application repackaging kind of solution that builds on the toolkit, and you just drag and drop something into it, and it's not Evergreen. That's actually another one that's used, but this is a slightly older tool. I'm trying to remember the name of it. My mind's gone blank on it. It's a guy from New Zealand, I think, that built it. But essentially, it stored all the command line parameters for a whole bunch of different apps that wouldn't be that was it. They're not MSIs; they're actually all executables. So you could just drop an exe in, and it will basically package up produce a PowerShell script that uses the toolkit to. Yeah. Okay. Right. Well, let's cut this whole bit. I'll actually have my details better next time, eh?
Yeah. If you find it, we can put it in the description of the video.
Yeah.
So no issue there. No issue there. Yeah. So yeah, from spending a lot of time, there's a lot of functions in this toolkit, and I personally love a lot of them. And you guys know that I'm trying to build kind of a production here where I show the features that I love in the toolkit, and which I think is very usable for everyone actually in the deployment space. And well, if I must say any feature or any function that I really love, basically everyone, but if I must say one, it would be kind of the way that you made it possible to add stuff into all users, current user Hive in the registry. One thing I really spend a lot of time doing when I built MSI packages was this self-healing functionality, where you kind of create advertised shortcuts, and it goes into the client and asks if all the key components in this package is already on the device, and if not, then it's going to execute the self-healing and create those. So that was a way to get current user keys into the current Hive of the user. But if you're not familiar with all the ways you have to build this in MSI, because it's quite advanced, and you could
It's involved. Yeah.
It is. So having to deal with that and put it into the PowerShell App Deployment Toolkit, it's actually going to be not in the next video, but in after that. I'm going to show how that function is actually working.
Cool.
If you guys, everyone here, were to say one function of their favorite, which one would that be?
Mo, do you want to go first, because it kind of
I'll go first
nicely.
because we were just talking about this before the call, and that was the invoke HKCU registry settings for all users was the one that I was going to say, because that was the one I wrote as well. So just like you, I dealt with this problem a lot in the MSI space, and just trying to do it via MSIs and doing it correctly, and also maybe teaching other people how to do it correctly was just a pain in the ass. It wasn't great. And eventually I realized I just don't want to do it that way, especially if I'm trying to save time. It's just too much work. So that's sort of where the idea came from. And then, it was a lot of time and effort. and trying to figure out little bits and pieces, but that's definitely one of my favorites.
There's a lot in the whole like MSI space, or the Windows installer space, that there's best practice in how you actually do something, and so something like that, like self-healing, is there's a whole like lot of involvement in like living up to best practices. But at some point, you kind of have to say to yourself, well, okay, if we just like scrap best practices and we just do things like hit this with like with a hammer, and you get work done, and you get a ton of work and get the work done in half the time. I think that's one of the things that like self-healing capabilities of MSIs across multiple users is just a nightmare to try and manage. And that's where this function was actually like really, really handy.
Another thing is active setup. I've always hated active setup because it's a feature that relies on Internet Explorer being there, being installed. It's a part of Internet Explorer being used in a very non-standard sort of way. And it's a feature Microsoft's officially deprecated like 10 years ago. They don't want anyone to use it. So there had to be another solution for us. For me personally, I needed another solution that we could rely on long-term. I wonder how that even plays on European builds like of Windows, where Internet Explorer isn't even allowed to be installed, right? I don't know if that's still the case, but I always wondered about that. Like, if Internet Explorer is not installed, is active setup just broken? That probably would be true in enterprise space anyways, but,
Yeah, you're right. There was some case here where we had to have a choice, at least, if we wanted Internet Explorer or another browser. That's how it went. But active setup has always been working for me, but as you said, it's not a supported feature by Microsoft, because this is literally working for Internet Explorer, and the features needs to set for every user here. So I wouldn't recommend use active setup. And now that Internet Explorer has been buried, it's just a matter of time where we won't see any execute or any binaries of Internet Explorer in Windows anymore, right?
Yep.
Yeah. So RIP Internet Explorer, and maybe RIP active setup. Yeah. use it if you want, but it's not recommended. I can't recommend it. You know.
Especially when you have to log out and log back in for it to actually apply, which our function avoids, right? So
yeah, exactly. It will always hard to tell the customer and the persons after testing some software, why do I have to log off? Because I have auto update something I want to disable. Okay, I'm much wiser now. No, I'm not. This is bad user experience. Yeah. Okay, guys. I know there's a number of commercial products out there and services providers that leverage the App Deployment Toolkit, and I can give you some examples on that. Flexera, for example, bundles this toolkit as part of Admin Studio or for application repackaging, which we've talked about MSIs stuff. And another company called Scapman, which I have in my tenant actually to patch my third-party apps. I saw PSADT in that as well. So how do you feel about companies that build on top of an open source tool like this? Yeah.
I think, I mean, you know, we have no problem with companies building on top of, you know, what is essentially like an open source project. I mean, it's been put out there to be helpful to everyone, and that I guess includes the commercial space. I think we probably do have a couple of expectations of any kind of like vendor or service provider who might be kind of planning to use a toolkit. We might kind of we have a couple of expectations that they would, you know, keep attribution being one. What it would be very beneficial would be community participation. And I'm specifically talking about support issues. Like there's a lot of questions that get asked about the toolkit. There's a lot of forum posts and people looking for help. And then we have like a couple of people that I can think of specifically that are very helpful and they give up their personal time to just answer questions and help people out. But there is a number of commercial tools that use the App Deployment Toolkit and have essentially deferred support of it back to us. So they're getting the benefits of using a free tool, and then they're basically pushing the support aspects of it back to us. Even though, and in some instances, we've been supporting their commercial products and giving up our free time to to support them, and that's kind of that's a little bit hard to take sometimes. And I think that's something that we'd like to be able to see companies kind of, you know, if they're gonna use it commercially, then hey, maybe you could like participate in support questions.
Yeah, it sounds like it's the wrong purpose here. You know, building upon something that's been built for free and posted out there, and then you want them who built it to support if there is any issues or it doesn't fit into the way commercialization would think like. It doesn't sound right to me.
It's definitely been it has chewed up quite a bit of time of the three of us and other people as well who've been active in our forums. And yeah, it's something that I think that we kind of feel a little bit strongly about. I mean, the one thing to keep in mind here is we've not made this a commercial venture, and we've not made any money off the toolkit. We've had a donation strategy from the outset. I think we've kind of, to be fair, we've really received very little in terms of donations, mostly been from individuals. I think there's only one company that I'm aware of that actually made like a donation. I don't know, Sean, if you can jump in or if you can weigh in on that.
Yeah, well, I suppose sort of generally speaking, if you're a commercial product and you're leveraging open source software, my expectation would be that you know, you give something back, you know, make a contribution to the project. It could be testing new releases, it could be development support, it could be a donation, but it's a community tool, and if it's going to be used in commercial product and it's going to add significant value to that product, then I think it's only right that the project is supported in return by the commercial product.
Yep. Well put, Sean.
Yeah, I can agree on that. I can definitely agree. So, what would you expect for any commercialization, if you have any expectation for that?
As in for our plans, I guess we've had plans a number of times to try and commercialize it. We're also very aware of that. This has been a free project where we kind of want to maintain that. We don't want to, just kind of suddenly come along and say, hey, there's like a paid version. It's not really in fitting with our ethos and a lot of other people's as well. So we're still hammering out the details of that. I think we've got a couple of very good ideas, and we don't want to put any sort of negative sentiment out there by trying to charge for this. So that's not what we're going to do. If anything, I think something that we will definitely offer is some sort of like enterprise support, where companies can potentially get us to essentially provide support for issues they may encounter, which hopefully there's going to be none. But there's they may also look for some of features or sort of like additional services, help with repackaging stuff or help with producing internal tools. Who knows?
Yeah, I think that could be a business case to build upon that. And then I don't know how many people know PowerShell App Deployment Toolkit, but I guarantee you this is a big product out there. Just by looking at the GitHub and the stars, and it's huge. I mean, I have 100 stars on my GitHub, and you have 1,200 or something like that. It's very, very big product.
So we don't know of any sort of like rough figures. We know what companies are using it, or we have a good idea from people that have told us. We don't know what we don't know, and what we do know is that the numbers are huge. Like some of the, I don't know whether we're now allowed to name names, but I mean there is some very, very big companies, and there's actually governments and military and defense contractors. It's used very extensively. So we're aware of that. It's one of the reasons as well why we don't push out changes lightly, because we know that we've potentially impacted, or we can potentially break an awful lot of stuff out there. So we've always been quite measured with how we with new releases, and this is one of the reasons why it's taken so long to get new versions out.
Yeah. I think the best metric to measure a popularity is when you see job descriptions and you see that one of the requirements is knowing the PowerShell App Deployment Toolkit. Then I'm like, yep, all right. We've become a bit of a standard in the space.
Yeah, in fact, actually, it's been called out by some of the bigger kind of like software packaging companies or the tools. Like Flexera they've kind of called us out as a de facto standard. So and it being like referenced in certain jobs and being a requirement for jobs. Yeah, that's pretty cool.
And you've got packaging factories as well that are adopting it and using it as standard with their clients. So,
actually, I think even Admin Studio, they haven't officially killed off WiseScript, but they do tell all of their customers to use PowerShell App Deployment Toolkit if they're still using WiseScript. So I remember we did a webinar with them once, and that's the message that they were sharing with their customers.
Yeah, can't help them all, can you? But I definitely don't want go back to those Visual Basic Scripts days. But guys, now to a very serious question. I see many asking if the PowerShell App Deployment Toolkit is dead, and I'm going to share a site here. You might know it because it's from your site. One is asking, is PowerShell App Deployment Toolkit dead? And I guess he means in the development side, because it's really living out there. People is using it. Is it feature complete, as Microsoft would say?
No, and it'll never be feature complete. It's a rolling thing that'll change over time, and it is not dead. No, I think we probably owe people a little bit of an apology for things have dragged on a little bit, like since the last release. I think it's been about 2 years since we got our last release out there. There's been numerous reasons for that. I think life changes have been kind of the main thing that has dragged our attention away. Life, work, we've all kind of gone through a bunch of job changes. There's been family changes, illnesses, cancer, death, COVID. There's been a lot going on for at least for the three of us, and I'm pretty sure the rest of the world as well, over the last couple of years. And I'll be straight out. I mean, this has not been the primary focus of our spare time, and it couldn't possibly be. But it's not something that it's something that we're kind of very much aware of, and we've taken a look at, I guess, a number of technology changes in the industry as of late, and new tooling that's come out. There's been a fairly kind of substantial shift towards work from home. That's kind of changed really the game, and it's also changed what we could potentially be doing with the toolkit as well. So we've kind of reached an inflection point where we see the need to develop a lot more features and make a number of substantial changes and new features, changes, and recommit essentially to the toolkit. And that's what we're hoping to do with the latest release of 3.9, which drops today as well.
3.9, that's interesting.
Yeah, we're holding back on 4. I don't really want to talk about roadmap right now. I think we're still figuring that out ourselves. But there's been a lot of kind of like development been done. It might look like it has been a little stale on GitHub. There's been all the development stuff to 3.9, and I think what we're going to do, or what we'll look to do, is be a lot more transparent with what we do on V4 going forward. But development is, I would say, active. We are not dead by any stretch of the imagination. If anything, we're doubling down, and we're going to say we are committing ourselves to this project, and hopefully be able to work out a monetization strategy as well to keep us working on this with a lot of speed.
Yeah, you're very much alive. We can see that here on screen, guys. I love it. I love it. So, yeah, I mean, you don't want to talk about roadmap. That's okay. I think
we can dance
curious
around a few things. I'm sure. If there's anything in particular,
I want to know.
I mean,
I'll say a little bit. So, I think we all see that there is scope for more innovation with the toolkit. Technology has moved on. There are different challenges now than there were maybe at the time this was developed. I think we see scope for the toolkit becoming and evolving into something that maybe solves other challenges in the endpoint space outside of just applications. So there, we do have some ideas around what the toolkit could evolve into, but don't want to commit today to what that roadmap looks like and when it might come to fruition.
Yeah, I definitely could come up with a couple of things that could be interesting. Maybe I need to go into the site where you have feature requests and then sign in there and say, I would like that. But
that is a good idea. There is a couple of things that, I mean, we know that we've already kind of put a lot of code effort into. We have kind of maybe some feature complete items that I won't say at this time. There's specific vendors that I could mention the likes of, let's say, Intune. There's also other vendors that we've not really talked about before, but have kind of jumped into this space as well. There's Tanium, there's Automox, there's Workspace ONE. These are all things that I think we're probably the better thing to say is we're looking to be a little bit more agnostic on what platforms we integrate with. It's been SCCM up until now. It shouldn't be going forward. It should be across the board. So that's something that we definitely are pushing to do, is be more vendor agnostic, and then allow for, maybe migration between one platform to another, so that you don't get tied in.
Yeah. Well, most of my customers are working on Windows 10 right now, and we see that there's an end date, right? That's 2025, October 14th. Well, we have to migrate until then to, I guess what, Windows 11. And maybe there could be some benefits in having a great way of having your robust installations in PowerShell App Deployment Toolkit here. And you just know that it's going to work. The executable and the uninstallation will work on Windows 11. And then you don't have to do that much to actually upgrade your customers or your company, if you're inside company. That could be very cool, to have some sort of maybe tester, or say the likelihood for this to work on the next level is actually that could be actually very cool. So guys, I'm obviously working a lot with Microsoft Intune, and so I love to hear better integration to Intune, and maybe some of the features that Intune delivers. For example, we have zero trust principles, where we actually deliver a compliance signal to a device to make it somewhat secure, and you can trust that device. But sometimes that compliance signal, it gets disabled by because you need to have BitLocker enabled or secure boot, something like that. Could be nice to work more in that space to get a device compliant with the PowerShell App Deployment Toolkit. But we could definitely talk more into features.
I think the key word you're looking for there is remediation, and that's something that we've definitely been discussing a lot lately. So watch this space.
Exactly. Yes. Guys, lastly, you've spent so much time building this tool that benefits all of us, and at least for my personal sake, I would like to chime in and put and donate stuff to you, because I've really loved your tool all these 10 years and used it a lot for my customers. So I'm really grateful. Thank you for building it. And but how can we gratitude the time and for being able to use your wonderful work here?
I think, firstly, thanks for being patient while we get things together and get our new releases out, and kind of lay down the foundation for V4. Thanks for sticking with us while we get that done. And I guess, we're going to have there's going to be an update to the website that will have information around maybe enterprise support options and donations, things like that. Definitely keep an eye out for info there.
I think one thing I find really helpful is when someone is posting an issue on GitHub, that they're providing enough information with the issue. So maybe log files, error messages, and in some cases, we're getting the fixes along with the issues being reported, and that's really, really helpful. So if you're that way inclined and you have a bit of PowerShell knowledge, it's always welcome to have community contributions to the toolkit in that sense.
Yep, absolutely. I always appreciate an issue with a code fix in it.
Yeah, I think that's a great way to do it. And you're familiar with the feedback hub, aren't you, in Windows? And
yep.
obviously that's how Windows work with errors in Windows. So providing logs and pictures, something that is helpful, I guess that will help you every day to fix the bug faster, at least.
Yeah. Also, we appreciate everyone that has us on for a chat, and also all of the community users out there that write blog posts or make videos or have nice things to say about the toolkit and get the word out. So there's a lot of ways to contribute and help and spread the word. So we're all very appreciative of all of that.
Thank you so much, Mo. So it was absolutely a pleasure, guys, to have you in this interview. It's late night in Denmark. I know it's very difficult to fit in a time zone for everyone here, but we got it. It's Sunday, and going to work tomorrow. Surprise! But, oh boy. Then
thanks for accommodating us with the 3 different or 4 different time zones.
But really, really, guys, my pleasure to host this, and I really wish you all the best. And I really look forward to look into 3.9.
Awesome.
It was a pleasure. Thanks for having us.
Thank you, guys.
Take care.
Take care.
Take care.
Bye.